This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my re-recording of the bridge class that I did last night. Re-recorded because I was a bit rubbish last night, and as you know, lost some files, the phone went, all sorts of things went wrong. So hopefully we'll have more success this morning. And here we go. So allow me just to share my screen. And here's Bridge open, and this is exactly what it will look like the first time that you open it. I'm just going to minimize it for a moment and just talk about file structure. So I'm assuming that many of you will be using libraries to store your images, like Photos or Lightroom, more likely. And Bridge doesn't function in the way that Lightroom functions. Lightroom basically is a library in which you store all of your images, whereas Bridge will access images so that you can cull them and label them and rate them and all of that kind of stuff. But it won't actually store them. So if you are already using Lightroom, it would be necessary to export all of the images and store them somewhere else. And many people ask this question, and that is, how do you do that and where do you put them? So once you've exported the images from Lightroom, I would suggest perhaps that you use a system like the one I use. I have an external hard drive in which I've created folders for each year that I've worked. And inside each of these folders are a series of subfolders, one for each month of the year. And then inside these subfolders are subfolders for each of the jobs that I've done during that particular month. So here we are, 2019. This is the subfolder for October. And you can see that I did 10 jobs during October. And each of them has a unique folder. So it's very straightforward, actually, very easy to set up. Each folder I give a job code number to, and you may care to use dates. I choose not to because sometimes I do more than one job in a day, and I wouldn't want two jobs with the same apparent job code, which wouldn't make any sense. So I just increase the number incrementally with each new job. And the job number, which is unique, is followed by the name of the client, and that in turn is followed by a description of the contents. So this is all theatre, no, it's not all theatre, but it's mostly theatre. So we've got Peter Pan, Comedy of Errors, My Fair Lady, etc. And then inside each of these folders, you would find all of the files for that particular job. So that's it, really. It's a really, really simple structure to set up and develop on your Mac. The only other document that I use is a little Pages document, which looks like this. And it's a simple list of job codes, followed by the names of the clients, followed by the title of the contents. And from this simple document, I can locate absolutely anything with a simple search. So that's how I work. And I'm sure there are many other different routes that one could take and adopt, but that's worked for me for a very long time. So I'll be sticking with that. So let's have a look at Bridge. You can download Bridge from the Adobe website. There is no charge. When you download the application, you'll also download an app called Creative Cloud, but don't panic about that. Creative Cloud is actually your friend because Creative Cloud will check daily to see if there are any updates to your Adobe software and then instruct you to download the update if there is one. So it's a good thing, not a bad thing. It won't suddenly start demanding money or suddenly start throwing advertising at you because it just doesn't do that. Okay, let's have a little look. So this is what it will look like when it first opens. And it looks pretty familiar in a way, in that we've got this big window in the middle, just like Affinity Photo. And at the moment, it's showing me the contents of my own personal file on my laptop. Over on the right-hand side, you've got panels, just like you have in Affinity Photo, and we'll talk about how they function and what they do in a minute. But unlike Affinity Photo, where down this side you have tools, Adobe Bridge chooses to store yet more panels. And at first sight, it looks pretty daunting, but I think it's all very straightforward. So let's have a quick tour. There's a folders panel here, which just shows you the folder structure of my laptop. You can see there's a little disclosure triangle next to the desktop, and if I just click on that, it will show me the contents of my desktop. And there is the 2020 Bridge class folder that contains all of the images that we'll be working with today. And if I click on that, all of the images in that folder will appear in the main window. Now, you can see a little bit of work going on down here at the bottom of the screen. And what is happening is that Adobe Bridge is reading each of these files and creating a collection of proxy images so that when you go to take a closer look at them, the images will load really quickly. It's not fast. I mean, there's only 69 small files in this folder. I quite often come home from the theatre with perhaps 1,000 or as many as 1,500 images. And with 1,500 images, it's time to go and make a cup of tea, basically, and then come back to work on them once they've all been completed, once that job's been done. And we'll talk about that again in a bit more detail later. So there are a couple of other ways that we can access images. I'm just going to take this back to the desktop for a moment and minimize it. So I've got my 2020 Bridge class folder here. Another way of opening the contents is simply to drag that icon down to the Bridge icon in the dock. And there you see the main window has been populated from the 2020 Bridge class folder. And you can see over in the folders panel that the 2020 Bridge class is highlighted. Now, there's also there's a panel next door to the folders panel called Favorites. And Favorites is very useful if you access the same folder on a regular basis. So, for example, if I was going to be working in the 2020 Bridge class every single day for the next 3 months, then it would make sense for me to save this folder as a favorite, because then I can access it really quickly. And to do that, all you have to do is pick it up from wherever it is on your hard drive and drag it into the favorites panel. And there it is. So in future, rather than navigating to it through my folders menu, I can just go to favorites and click on it here. Right, so beneath that, they're very simple, very straightforward. And I think the important thing about bridges, it looks daunting. And although there are lots of panels and lots of buttons and lots of icons, they're all actually really easy to use. So underneath all of this stuff, we have a collection of 3 panels, one called Filter, which we'll be talking about shortly, one called Collections, which again we'll be talking about shortly, and one called Export. And the Export panel does not function with Affinity Photo. It's specifically tied to Adobe Photoshop. So we may as well get rid of it because it's just in the way. So I'm going to go to the window menu and just select Export panel, which you can see is ticked at the moment, and release my mouse button, and now it's gone. So we don't need to worry about it. If at some future point you installed a copy of Photoshop and you wanted to use it, all you have to do is go back to the Windows menu and select it. Okay, over on the other side, again at the top, we have two panels, one called Preview and one called Publish. The Preview panel does what it says on the tin. If I select an image, it's previewed in this window. Okay, now the Publish panel, again, is something designed by Adobe for Adobe, so it's irrelevant for our purposes. So once again, we may choose to go to Window, Publish panel and get rid of it because it serves absolutely no purpose. And finally, underneath the Preview panel, we have two panels for metadata and keywords, both of which we'll be talking about in a minute. So the workspace itself is very flexible. Do you see what happens to my cursor as I draw it across the line between the panel and the images? And I missed it. It enables me to move left and right, so we can take up as much or as little space as we want with these panels. As you can see, I've reduced its size, but absolutely all of the contents are still visible, so I may as well take advantage of that and use this larger space for the contents here. And the same applies on this side. So if I want a larger preview panel, I can move that across. It also works vertically, so I can draw this up and down to make my preview as large as possible. And similarly on this side, not that it matters at the moment, but I have the ability to move this up and down. So once I've done all this, and once I've actually created a space that I really like the look of and that I'd like to kind of stick with, Bridge gives us the facility to save this as a working space for the future. And all you need to do is go to the Windows menu, down to Workspace, and choose New Workspace. Give it a title and save it. And so now I have a button up here that will specifically and only take me to this particular layout. So there are others available. You see, I've just clicked on Essentials, and now all of that stuff's come back that we've got rid of. And there are others that we'll look at in a few minutes, but for the moment, I'm just going to return to the one that I set up. So please forgive me for 2 seconds. I need to have a quick look at my notes. Yeah, okay. So Bridge is capable of displaying a lot of file types. I've given you a bit of a mix here. Most of them are JPEGs, as you can see. This is a Canon RAW file, CR2. That's Canon RAW. Inside this subfolder, which is called Color Targets, I've got a Photoshop file, .psd, and a couple of TIFFs. So they all open perfectly easily and really quickly in Bridge. Down at the bottom somewhere, I have a movie, and I can run the movie from the preview panel if I wanted to check the contents of it. And I can also scrub through it quickly just by dragging the little slider there. So if I just press play, I can now scrub through the contents as quickly or as slowly as I wish. It also does a great job with PDFs, and here's a PDF of the notes for this evening. And you can see that I have the ability to scroll through those in preview. I'm running a small preview at the moment, so I might care to just increase the size somewhat so that I can actually read the contents. So it's all very flexible, very flexible. So down at the bottom of the window, there are 4 icons that are quite important and a slider. Now the slider determines the size of the icons, the thumbnails in the preview window. So if I just drag that up, you can see them getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And if I drag to the left, they'll get smaller and smaller and smaller, like so. And there are 4 ways of displaying the thumbnails. First of all, in a grid. Second, as just thumbnails, and you may ask what the difference is. The difference is, do you see at the moment that I can't see the file names of these images at the bottom? Whereas when I snap into the grid, it always displays all of the information. So if seeing file numbers is important for you, which it certainly is for me when I'm working, this seems to be best choice. It also offers a details panel so that you can see all of the most important details associated with each of the files. And it also offers a list which again just provides you with basic information like date created, the size of the file, what sort of file it is, and all of that. But I'm going to go back for the time being to the grid, which is where I prefer to work. So let's have a look at a few essential preferences. As I mentioned, I think at the start, Adobe Bridge, of course, is an Adobe program. So it's designed to work with Adobe Photoshop and other Adobe applications. So we need to make a few changes in preference to force Adobe Bridge to open images straight into Affinity Photo. Before we do that, I just want to show you that you could just leave it where it is, and by control clicking on an image, I have this option to open with, and you see at the moment that it's set by default to Adobe Photoshop, but directly underneath that is Affinity Photo. So if I now click on Affinity Photo 1.8.3, the image will open in Affinity Photo. However, that's not very useful if you want every single one of your images to open in Affinity Photo. So we'll take a quick look now at how you set the program up to ensure that you can open all of your images directly into Affinity Photo. So I'm going to go to the Adobe Bridge menu. I'm going to choose Preferences. And there are 4 things I'd like to take a look at. So first of all, let's have a quick word about cache. So the cache is all of the information that is created by Adobe Bridge for all of the contents of whatever folder that you have open. And over the course of time, of course, that can take up quite a lot of disk space. So if you're sitting on a really huge hard drive, you can ram the cache size up to an absolutely gigantic size, which means that everything will happen more quickly. On my Mac Pro, it's set very firmly to the far end, but I guess possibly perhaps for most amateur use, leaving it where it defaults might be perfectly sufficient. I don't like the idea of keeping 100% previews in cache because 100% previews take up lots and lots of disk space. So I feel inclined to uncheck that. And I just let Bridge build the 100% previews each time I open a folder. Again, you may choose to keep that ticked and you'll have quicker access to the files if you do. The most important preference is file type associations. And this is a long, long list of all of the file types that Adobe Bridge is capable of displaying, and an equally long list of the applications that it can send them to in order to open them. And what you'll need to do here is to make sure that for every single file type that you personally use, that you set the little menus here to open in Affinity Photo. So for example, I've got a Canon Camera Raw file. I know it's that one there. So I'm going to change this Adobe Photoshop 2020 to Affinity Photo. And then I know I've got a lot of JPEGs. Here we are. So we have 2 types of JPEG. Somebody I'm sure who's very smart will tell me what a JPEG 2000 is. I have no idea, but I know I don't use them, so I don't care much. But here's the important one. JPEG currently set to Adobe Photoshop 2020, and I'm going to change that to Affinity Photo. Okay, so that's that for this particular folder of my images. If you're using a Nikon camera, then obviously you need to find the Nikon RAW file and in this list, and make sure you change that, etc. Under interface, next one down, remember Martin talking about the fact he didn't like these really dark interfaces. He much preferred to work in a lighter environment. And here you can control many options to control the general appearance of Bridge. That, of course, is all a matter of taste. Finally, we're just going to go to the Labels menu in the Preferences list. And you can see there's a checkbox here that says require the command key to apply labels and ratings. Now, I would prefer to get rid of this because at the moment, if I apply a star rating, for example, to an image, I'd have to press the command key as well as a number key. So in other words, if I wanted to apply a 2-star rating, then I'd have to hit the command key and then also hit the number 2 key. So I'm going to get rid of that because by doing so, it means that all I have to do is hit the relevant number. And as you'll see in a moment, that really speeds up my workflow. I think that's it. So we'll just click OK. So let's have a quick word about viewing images. There are several methods. If I just select an image, first of all, I'm just going to hit the space bar and that image will immediately fill the screen. And I hit the space bar again and it will return me to Bridge. So that's method 1. We also, of course, we have the preview pane, and if we wanted to use that all the time, then we might decide that it's necessary to devote far more screen real estate to the preview pane. And I'm just going to take that back because I don't. So Bridge has a lovely slideshow feature, which we'll talk about a bit later. But also under the View menu, it has a review mode, which is a lovely way to look at the files. So this creates a sort of carousel of the images in the folder. And by using the left and right arrows, I can move through them really quickly to get a better idea of the contents. Just going to hit the escape key to return us to Bridge. Good, right, just sort my notes. There's also a film strip mode. Film strip is really useful for looking at single images. Again, I can advance through these using the arrow keys. But unlike all of the other methods, film strip is also very useful for looking at more than one shot at a time. So if I just hold down the command key and select this neighboring image, I can now see these two images side by side, and it gives me a much better idea of how they look, which is better, which is, you know, which I prefer. So I may decide to just delete one of them and just hang on to the other. So that's quite useful. What else? Oh yeah, While you're in this mode, do you see that my icon has turned to a little magnifying glass? And if I click, it will open a loop which shows the image at 100%. So this is, and I can drag this around the image. And if you need to check focus, which I often do with theatre shots because they're always taken in such poor light, this is a really quick and easy way of doing that. And I can close it again by just clicking. Right, what's next? Now, let's just go back to my workspace and talk about opening and managing files. So we know that because these are absolutely, these work right across every single application that we use. If I hold down the command key, I can select non-contiguous images. So if I double click on one of these now, these 6 images will open in Affinity Photo. You know that if I hold down the Shift key, if the images that I want to open are contiguous and I wanted to open all of these and all of these to here, all I do is hold down the Shift key and click, and that's selected all of those. And if I double click them, they will all open. Now, I may decide, I don't like them very much, but I may decide that I want to perhaps pop all of the sunsets. You see there are 2 sunsets here, and there are 5 sunsets down here. I may decide to pop those into a subfolder. And to create a subfolder, I'm just going to right click, or if you don't have a right button on your mouse, control click. And that will give me an option to create a new folder. I'm going to give it a name. I'm just going to pick up the images from there and the images from there and pop them inside the subfolder. And if we have a look at the folders menu now, we'll find that here we've got the 2020 bridge class. And if I just open it up, you can see that we now have the subfolder that already existed called color targets, which is there, but we also have one called sunsets, which we've just created, which is there. Now, if we decided that actually on reflection, this wasn't a very good idea, and we want to put the contents of this subfolder back into the main folder, all we need to do is open them up, select them all, and carefully drag them back to the parent folder. So I'm just going to pick them up here and drag them to 2020 bridge class. So now my sunsets folder is empty, but when I click on 2020 bridge class, they've all been returned to where they started. So we have in the top right corner of the screen, we have a trash icon. And if I want to get rid of that folder, I can send it to the trash. Right, what's next? So these JPEGs were recorded a very long time ago, 2008, I think. No, 2006. So the holiday a long time ago. And my very basic compact camera didn't at the time revolve images automatically. I suspect probably that every single living camera these days does it automatically. But if you do need to revolve them, then we've got a little rotate counterclockwise and rotate clockwise buttons here. So I can actually get through these really quickly, because if I use the right arrow key to move on to the next image, and just keep my cursor poised over the rotate clockwise button, Okay, you get the idea. So I can correct that really quickly. And now when I double click on this particular image, for example, this will open in an Affinity Photo the right way up. Obviously, doing the work here rather than in Affinity Photo is much better because it means that I can preview them the right way up, which of course makes perfect logical sense. Right, where are we? So Bridge offers lots and lots of ways of sorting files, and I'm just going to go to the View menu and Sort, and you can see that at the moment it's set to ascending order by file name, but I also have the choice of by type, date created, date modified, by size, dimensions, la 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 la. So lots and lots and lots of different variables there. So, and why is this important? Well, just to give you an example, as a theatre photographer, I work with 2 cameras, not 1, because there's no time in theatre to change lenses. So I have 1 camera fitted with a 70 to 200 telephoto zoom and 1 camera fitted with a 24 to 70 wider angle zoom, so that I can swap between the 2 cameras, one shoulder to the other, really quickly during a show, so I don't miss stuff because it's happening whilst I'm busy fighting to change lenses in the dark. So before I go onto a theatre shoot, I always make sure that the clocks on my 2 cameras are synchronized. And then when I get back from the theatre shoot, I chuck all of the images from both cameras, from all of the cards that I've used, into a single folder. And then when I open them in Bridge, I can just go to View, sort them by date created. And that way, everything will appear in the order that it actually happened on stage, which is fantastic. So a really useful facility there. What else? Numbering. So all of these files have got really uncomfortable numbers at the moment. And if I wanted, for example, to tidy that up, I'm going to just select all of the JPEGs. So I'm going to select the first holiday shot there and the last one here, holding down the Shift key. Now I'm going to go to the Tools menu, and the first item is Batch Rename. So as ever, it looks immensely complicated, but it really isn't. But Bridge gives you the freedom to create really, really complicated names that might include text or dates or sequence numbers. And at the moment, I'm just going to hit all of these minus signs to get rid of all but one. And then rather than text, I'm going to go to sequence number. So it's telling me that it will now rename all of these files with a sequence number of 3 digits, which sounds good to me. And down at the bottom, it gives you an example. So the first of these, which currently is called DCF0541, will become 001, which is much tidier and much easier to get your head around. So I'm just going to hit the rename button. And it's done. So now all of my lovely JPEG holiday pictures have a much easier number to read and looks infinitely tidier than it did 5 minutes ago. Right, what's next? Yeah, okay, so rating and labeling next. I don't know how you guys currently work, but what I normally do, both professionally and indeed with my personal images, is I rate them so that I can locate my favorite images more quickly. And the way that I would normally do this would be this. I would use the review mode. And in order to rate the ones that I quite like with 1 star, all I need to do is hover over the right hand arrow on my keyboard and hover over the 1 key with my left hand. Just go through them. I like that one. So I'll just press the 1 key. Going back, I like that one. So press the 1 key. You get the idea. So let's just pick those two up. So I'm now hitting the escape key to get out of this. And if I now have a look at the filter panel here, you'll see under ratings now that I have 48 files with no rating, and I have 21 files with a 1-star rating. And if I just check the checkbox next to the 1-star rating, it will instantly only display the images that I've applied a 1-star rating to, which is fantastic, because now I can go through exactly the same process, view, review mode, and now I can hit them a bit harder and just select the images from these 21 images that I think are standout images of this particular holiday. And this time I'm going to hit the 2 key, so it'll give them a 2-star rating. So I'm going to hit that one, and that one, and that one, that one, that one. And the escape key. And you see now I have a rating for 1 star and 2 stars in the filter column. And if I want to just view the 2-star images, then I click in the appropriate box. And I may carry this process on until I end up with perhaps 2 or 3 5-star images, but you can see how, yeah, well, let's do it. Command B. And I'm going to hit 5 stars this time, just because I can. I'm going to hit that one because I really like the colors. And that one, and that one, and that one because it summed up the holiday, and that one because it's lovely, and that one, and that one, and the escape key. So now I've got 48 images with no rating, 8 images with 1 star, 6 images with 2 stars, and I've chosen 7 images as my absolute favorites, and there they are. So this is an incredibly quick way of revisiting images and finding the ones that you particularly like. So as well as stars, so we can apply 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 stars. We can also, by using the 6, 7, 8, 9 keys, we can apply a label to the image. So I'm going to go back into these now, just one more time. Command B. I really like that. And this time I'm going to hit 6. And you see that the 5-star rating now has a red bar behind it. I really like that one as well. And that one, and that one. Escape. So this can go on and on. So you've got 5 stars, you've got 4 different colors that you can use for rating your images to make them easier to locate. So I'm just going to uncheck that, which means that it'll take me back to this state where we can see all of the images. The next thing we need to talk about is stacking now, and also talk about the one real issue that Adobe Bridge presents to users of Affinity Photo. I'm just going to open this image. Now, you can see in the preview panel, it's a theater shot. I want to open it first of all in Photoshop. So I'm just going to go Control click open with Adobe Photoshop. And you can see this is opened in Adobe Camera Raw, and the image here is exactly the same as the image that you previously saw in Bridge, which is there. Now, the way that Photoshop works, which is wildly different from the way that Affinity Photo works, is that when you do some work on an image in Camera Raw, it generates a tiny file called a sidecar file. They're called .xmp files. Please excuse me. That XMP file contains all the information about the changes that I've made to this image. And you can see that I've adjusted the highlights, I've adjusted clarity, I've added a bit of dehaze, I've pumped up the vibrance. I think there are one or two other things around that I've darkened this area here, for example, because it was very, very bright. Okay, so all of that information is stored in something called a sidecar file, and I can show it to you. You just open the 2020 Bridge class folder. There's the Bentwaters Road CR2 file, and there's the Bentwaters Road.xmp file. So this is a tiny file. It's only 14 kilobytes, but it contains all of the information about what we've done to this file in Adobe Camera Raw. Now, unfortunately, Affinity Photo doesn't generate XMP files like this. And when you open the same image in Affinity Photo, you have to develop it and save it as a .af photo file. And sadly, at the moment, and I can't see it changing, Adobe Bridge won't display the contents of .af photo files. So let me just demonstrate that. So I'm just going to close that up. Go back to Bridge. And this time we'll open the So you see it looks really different, and that's because you're now looking at the image that was recorded in the camera, not the tweaked image that I'd created using Adobe Camera Raw. So what I need to do now is to go through the process that I went through. So I'm going to brighten the image a bit. I'm going to ramp up the vibrance a lot. I may even add a bit of saturation. I need to work on this area here because these two actors are far too close to these lights, so they're very burnt out. So I'm going to pick up the overlay paint tool, doing this very roughly for speed, paint over those two actors, and then just pull back the exposure on them. So this is stuff that we've done in the Affinity Photo class. So that's looking a lot better now. Now, were I in Adobe Camera Raw, I could now cancel out of this, and all of those changes would be recorded in an XMP file. If I cancel out of this in Affinity Photo, you're left with nothing. So it'll just go back to the way it looked when we opened the thing. So what we need to do is to develop the file and then save the file. I need to load, so it's currently saving in documents, which I don't want it to. I want it to save it into the same folder that we're working from. So I'm going to go to Desktop, 2020 Bridge class, and click Save. So that has now saved the .af photo file. A .af photo files are 16-bit, so you can still go and edit this in Affinity Photo safely. But all of the hard work, all the heavy lifting has been done. So I'm also going to save, and I'll explain why in just a few seconds. I'm also going to save this file as a very small JPEG. So I'm going to go to File, export, choose JPEG. I don't need it to be 100% quality, so I'm going to reduce this and choose a size. I think I'm going to make it 1,000 pixels wide. Hit the tab key so that we can see we're going to end up with 1,000 pixel by 666 pixels image. 60% quality, that's a complete seized from the air number, so hopefully it'll be all right. But you can see it's really small, and I'm going to click export. I want to save it in the 2020 bridge class and click save. Right, so we'll close that and close Affinity Photo. And now let's just enlarge these so that we can see better what we're doing. So now what we have here is we have the original CR2 file. We have the AF photo file, which unfortunately Bridge can't see. So it's just got this Affinity Photo icon on. And then we have this really small file, which is a JPEG. And you could leave all three of these files exactly as they are because it would do no harm. But it makes sense to stack them because then you can see that it's a stack. And the reason that we've created this little JPEG is that we're going to put this little JPEG on top of the stack so that we'll know that behind that little JPEG, we have this fabulous quality, high quality AF photo file sitting, waiting for use. And the way that we do this is that we just select the three images, and we right click or control click, and we go down to stack and group as stack. So here we have the three files. I've purposely made a mistake and put the wrong one on top. But just to illustrate how easy it is to move them around, you open the stack by clicking on the number. I need to deselect all three and then just select the JPEG and then move the JPEG to the front of the stack. So now when I close the stack by clicking on the number, so we have the three files, but we've got the finished JPEG on top. So we can see that and what it looks like in the preview panel and everywhere else. But behind that, we've saved our AF photo file, which is obviously the very, very high quality exported file, and also the original Canon RAW file. So that stacks. Hopefully useful. What have we got left? Not very much now. Let's have a quick word about metadata. So over on the right-hand side, we have the metadata and keywords panels, and we'll have a quick look at the metadata panel first. I'm sure you're all familiar with metadata, and there's a huge amount of information stored inside each file that we create. But the important thing for me is, certainly for professional work, is I want to make sure that I copyright everything that I push out to the press, everything that I push out to theatres. And there are two ways to do that. I can't remember what IPTC core stands for, but it's not very important. All I do know is that inside the IPTC core, I have the facility to add my name. Let's just choose a file at random. So under creator, I can put Mike Kwasniak, ideally not half in capitals and half in lowercase. That's better. And slightly further down, copyright status is unknown by default, so I'm going to set this to copyrighted. And then under the copyright notice, I'm going to hit Option G, which gives me the copyright icon. And it's done. So that information is now saved inside this JPEG. Okay, which is all very well, but what if I want to apply it to all of the JPEGs? Well, obviously there's a quick and easy way to do that, and it's from the Tools menu. And you see we have Create Metadata Template, Edit Metadata Template, and Append Metadata or Replace Metadata. So let's create one. So the first thing I'm going to do is give it a name. That'll do. And then I need to just put a little tick in the checkbox next to the lines that I want to use. So creator is Mike Kwasniak. I'd probably put some information in about my website, my email or contact email address, probably a good idea. And then most importantly, so I don't have no idea what that's doing there. Most importantly, copyright. So I'm going to put copyrighted and the same copyright notice. And save. So now, let's just make these icons a bit small, the thumbnails a bit smaller so that I can see them all. Now I'm going to pick up all of the Thailand holiday pictures. And I can go to the Tools menu, Replace Metadata. Here's my simple copyright at Mike Kwasniak Photography. And in a matter of like 3 seconds, all of that information has now been copied to every single one of these files. And just to prove it, if I just choose one and go to File, get Info, File Info, there's my IPTC data. It's got my name, my email address, and the copyright information. So that's that. So it may be something that you don't need to use, but certainly if you're providing the press with images, usually if you go to the trouble of actually just saying who you are by inserting it into the metadata, usually certainly here the East Anglian Daily Times will always pick up that information and they'll always attribute pictures to their creators. So it's worth doing if you get involved in anything like that. Finally, keywords. Oh, there's some stuff that I created earlier here, so I think I might just get rid of it. I don't know why delete is keyed out, is grayed out, so it doesn't look like it's going to allow me to. Let's try that again. Oh, sorry, don't know what's going on. Okay, anyway, as far as keywords go, if you want to use keywords, I don't, but keywords can be very useful for locating files. And just like the labels and the ratings that we talked about earlier, keywords will appear in the filter list. So I'm just going to create a new keyword. Okay, it's grayed out. I think this happened yesterday as well, and I think I need to do a quick restart. So please bear with me for a second. I'm going to close these as well, since we won't be using them again. Right, so we've just reopened Adobe Bridge, and hopefully this time it'll work. So I'm going to create a new keyword, and I'm going to call it Thailand holiday. And then I'm going to select that keyword, and I'm going to create a new sub keyword called sunsets. And I'm going to create another sub keyword called monks. Okay. Now I'm going to go searching for pictures of monks with my command key held down. And just check the monks keyword box. And deselect those. And then I'm going to find all of my sunsets. There's one there, and here. And I'm going to click in sunsets. And then I'm going to select all, of the holiday images and click in Thailand holiday. So that's done. So now over here under keywords, I should find, struggling at the moment, oh, here we are. Under keywords, I have Thailand, for which I've got 54 files. Sunsets, I have 7 files. Monks, I have 12 files. So you can see this is an incredibly speedy way to organize images so that you can find them really quickly. I said finally keywords, not quite, because we haven't had a look at collections. And just to illustrate how collections work, the tab is next to the filter tab. I've already created one here called favorite images. And you can see there's nothing in it. So you create them by just clicking on the plus sign here, new collection. And this could be potentially useful if you want a single folder holding all of your very most favorite images. And this is the way that it works. Let's say this image of these poppies is an absolute favorite. All I need to do is drag it into the favorite image folder. Now it hasn't moved it, the image is still here exactly where it started its life in the 2020 Bridge class folder. However, it's now, the necessary maths have been saved inside the favorite images folder so that when I click on this, it will take me to that image. So it hasn't copied the image, it's merely directing me to it. And the joy of this is that these images could come from absolutely anywhere. I'm going to put this one in as well because I like that. And on my desktop, I've got another folder of images recorded in the garden last time we had proper ice. And just because I can, let's say this is a particular favorite that I'd really like to access. So all I do is pick it up and drag it into the favorites folder. And now it contains that image as well as the two from the other folder. So you could make a collection of images from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different folders. And it could be a really useful way of maintaining a folder of favorites or competition entries or something like that. There's also something called a smart collection, which I'm not going to go into. The smart collection works in a very similar way, but it enables you to create instructions. For example, access every single image that I've applied 3 stars or more to, access every image that I've applied a colored label to, and that sort of thing. I think we're there apart possibly from a quick look at slideshows. Up in the view menu, you can see we've got slideshow and we've got slideshow options. Let's just, before we do, let's just go back to the bridge class, that's better. So we've got a load of images. So view, I'm going to go to slideshow options. So we can set a blackout or blackout additional monitors. We don't have an additional monitor. We can click to repeat the slideshow if we want. There's a zoom back and forth, which I hate because I kind of think if you're a photographer and you've composed pictures, you really shouldn't be messing around with such things. And then you can set the slide duration. I'm going to set it to 2 seconds just for this little demo. No captions, scale to fit, set by default. And then I can hit the play button. And unsurprisingly, it looks just like a slideshow. Right, let's escape from that. I think that that is everything. Let me just very quickly check my notes. Yep, we're done. So let's just stop sharing my screen. Hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's been useful. There's a lot to take in, but as I said earlier, it's very straightforward. So if you have any questions, please drop me an email. I have all the time in the world presently and hugely happy to help if you need some help. So thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye-bye.